Hi, welcome.
Welcome. Long time no see.
Yeah.
We're going to give everyone a quick chance to get in.
Welcome. Give it a few more minutes here while everyone's getting settled. Feel free to turn your camera on and or not if you don't want to, but and post things in the chat, questions along the way. We're keeping an eye on that.
Yeah, this session is going to be recorded, so if you don't want to be seen, you can turn your camera off. If you have questions, like Suzanne said, post them in chat, and we'll get to them. So I think we're good. We don't have anyone else in the waiting room.
All right, so we'll get started. Welcome. This is the 57th Tutorial Tuesday. So hard to believe we've been doing that many, but I know, isn't it? So hosted.
Oh, I was going to say we've been off for a couple of months because Suzanne moved. And
yes, I moved. So that's exciting, but it's always hard to move and leave friends, and but I'm excited. I'm back in New Mexico, which is where I grew up. So if anybody is in that area, let me know. I need a new knitting group or some support here. So but anyway, this is the 57th Tutorial Tuesday and hosted by Zen Garden, of course, but or sponsored by Zen Garden, and then Laura and I are your hosts. So again, I'm Suzanne Nielsen, and Laura Cameron is with us. We both do a lot of things in the fiber world. I do some designing, and then I love teaching and these tutorials. Laura does a lot of the sample knitting. She does a little designing on her own, and she's picked up a new hobby, right, with her new job, sewing. But anyway, that's another story. But this particular Tutorial Tuesday, we are going to just delve into all of the things you need to know for this amazing pattern, which could look a little intimidating. It is called Linientreu. I'm going to completely butcher it because it's German, but it means in line. And it's just a really cool design, especially for gradients, because you're knitting these triangles separately and then joining them as you go. But it just looks really cool with a gradient yarn because you get that flow in different directions than a normal shawl that's just like a normal gradient. So that's just a really neat, I think, a really neat aspect of this shawl. And Laura did knit this one. So we're gonna go through the different techniques. Yeah, it's beautiful. But maybe a little intimidating, but I will guide you through, and we will help you. So awesome. Okay, so get started here. Laura, do you want to add anything first before we dive in, or?
Well, this one was a fun knit. It does look a little daunting, but it actually goes together in modular fashion, and that's what we're going to cover tonight. So you start at the top with the first 3 triangles, and then you kind of pick up around, and you knit the first triangle, and then off the side of it, you knit the second triangle, and then off the side of that, you knit the third triangle. And then you kind of pick up at the bottom of those, and then you kind of work some stripes back and forth with a few increases just to create that little kind of chevron-y edge there. And then comes the big section of triangles, and I think there are 13 triangles across, and so you work those right across, one after the other, picking up. You're always picking up on at least one side, or sometimes on 2 sides. So again, it comes together very modularly. You can work through it at your own pace. The beauty is that the yarn does what the yarn does. We have kits that feature our new, it's gradient and glitter. So they are beautiful. They come in sort of the large cakes. These cakes are a little bit different than our our Serenity Silk cake, gradient cakes, they have 680 yards. So it's just a little bit less yardage, but it's got the stellina in it. And I used about 1.5 for the project. I had a little bit left over, and then I used a single skein of the neutral. And I'm about to talk about this week through July 28th, you can save $33 on the shawl kit. You just put it in your cart and you'll get the discount. And I'm about to drop that link in into the chat thread now. I was just working on that. And the only other thing I will say is I will show you, I will just show you the kit real quick. And then I will let Suzanne get into the bits and pieces of tonight. So let me, okay, I should be sharing my screen now. Can everyone see it?
Yep.
Oh,
That's good.
okay. So this is the shawl thread or this is the pattern on Ravelry, and you can download it from there. It does not come in your kit. You'll have to purchase it separately. And basically you can knit it with any color changing yarn you'd like and any neutral. We just decided to use Zen Yarn Garden's glorious gradient kits. So this is the shawl, and you can see that Suzanne's wearing the shawl right now, but I just wanted to go back to the beginning. We got some really fabulous photos from our photographer, and it is a nice, generous sized shawl. You know, it's definitely close to my arm length. I'm sure it's not close to Suzanne's because she's quite a bit taller than I am. So I don't think it's her entire span. Oh, maybe it is.
Almost, it is.
Okay, so it's almost 6 feet, folks.
It's 6 feet, over 6 feet.
Yeah, and it's fairly deep at the back. And so it's just a show-stopping piece. And so you can have it in any of the gradients that they dye. I knit mine in Inferno, and Suzanne is working on one. This is the Inferno gradient. That was mine. And Suzanne is working on one called Upbeat, which I'm sure I will get to in here. One more, Rhubarb. Gosh, there's so many great colors. I didn't know there were all of these. This is Upbeat. So it's purple and pink and orange. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Suzanne get into the details and show you what's going on tonight. And if you have any questions, please feel free to stick them in the chat.
Yes.
Sorry, that was a lot. I'll stop talking.
All right. No, we'll try to get through. So I'm going to share my screen, I think. Nope. All right.
And I should say that the pattern is pretty repetitive. So you're doing the same thing over and over. So once you know how to do one of them, you kind of know how to do all of them.
Yes. And I'm going to go over some little tips and tricks. So this I have here, the first triangle, complete. They do come out a little wonky. They're not like a perfect triangle. So don't freak out if yours isn't perfect. So I'm going to put the shawl over here. So this is triangle number 1. Yes, I have it on the right side. Triangle number 1. And then you pick up along the edge, and then you complete triangle number 2, and then number 3, like Laura was saying. And the triangles are knit from the outside in. So each time you're starting on the outside and you're decreasing in 3 spots, 1, 2, 3, to get that triangle to come all the way. And then you end with like just 3 stitches that you put just your yarn through the stitches and then tie those off. So it is a lot of like separate pieces, but they're joined as you go, which is modular knitting, as opposed to like piecework where you would just do pieces and then sew them together. You do one piece and then you connect the next piece, and then you pick up all along here and knit down. And then all of these triangles are also done kind of connected to each other. I believe you start off with, you do one separate, and then you connect this one and this one together. And then the next one you do, and then you connect. You're working along connecting as you go. So I'm going to show you that process. So in the pattern, she uses double point needles to do in the round. But as you can see, when you cast on, you have like 3 sections. So you would have 3 double point needles. And at the very edge, there's kind of a lot of stitches to fit on double point needles. So I would recommend longer double point needles, Or what I'm going to show you is how to do it in magic loop style, but you will have 3 loops instead of just 2 for a regular magic loop. So that's the little special thing I'm going to show you today. Another option would be to use like flexi flips, or even the Chow has those shorty needles. You could use, you know, sets of shorty needles or something to act almost like double points in your 3 sections. All right, but I will show you how I would do it, how I'm doing it. And that is, I completed this triangle just to show you kind of what that looks like. And then I picked up and I'm starting the next triangle. So you can see how it looks here. You cast on here, here, and then you pick up stitches along this edge. And I'm going to show you that in detail more, but I wanted to start with basic to just show you, kind of get a feel of how it's working before things look a little too crazy. They are going to look pretty crazy, but again, I'm going to try and keep it as neat as possible as I go around here. So with Magic Loop, you usually just have like 1 extra loop on the side of your needles, and you have them split into 2 sections. But in this case, it's much easier to keep it separated into your 3 sections. Because you're doing a decrease at each time. If you had it separated into 2 sections, you'd have to shift things around a little bit as you were decreasing. So it's possible to do it that way too, but I'll show you why I like this way and how to do it. So I am using a very long cable. So I have this is a 50-inch cable. I think you could probably do it with a 40-inch cable too, but you do want that long cable. And then we're working in the round here. So I am just going to go ahead and do a round to show you how to shift your stitches around. And like I said, don't worry that I'm skipping steps. I am going to go back and show you how to actually do the cast on with this. I just wanted to show you, get you used to it before it looked really, really crazy. So on this section, I'm switching back to the first color and knitting across. So I'll show you how this comes out, but basically we have these loops separating. When I start, I don't know if I can get it all in here, I'm not just going to start with my cable all crazy. I'm going to actually do an intentional kind of a loop around. So I'm going to make a loop with the cable and then start knitting. And what that does is keep the cross together at this join. The next tip is I'm just starting the next yarn and I'm making sure that my new color comes kind of around and over and the old color is left off there. Really, if you're just consistent, that's probably good enough. All right, so here I'm just working across and you'll see these triangles are actually really easy because you do the same thing for each side of the triangle. So every time you just work across, and then when you get to the last 3 stitches, you do a decrease, and then you have 1 stitch left. So you just work until you have 3 stitches. And then the decrease that she has you do, sorry, I'm trying to make sure I'm staying in the camera. The decrease is an SSK, which I've shown this trick before, but I like to do an SSK where I go into the front of the stitch, and then I go into the back of the next stitch, and then wrap my yarn. And then if you pull down a little bit, a nice little window opens up for you to pull your stitch out. So then, and then those just both come off, and that does the same thing as the SSK, but you don't have to take the time to slip your stitches, and then, so it just saves me some time, and then knit. All right, so now what do? We got to the end here. So I worked all the stitches that were on this needle, and now I'm going to need to knit the stitches that are on this leg of the triangle. So I need to readjust my my knitting needles so that I'm set up to work these stitches. So what I'm going to do is I just drop this needle I kind of pinch where my yarn is and the previous stitch that I just finished right here, and this join, I just kind of hold them together, and then I pull this yarn until this needle comes about to go into those stitches, and then I just leave it there. So now I have a huge loop here. Now I'm going to move this loop around. So I'm going to pull this side of the loop through these stitches so that this loop just gets a little bit smaller and more manageable. And I have I have all this extra cable here. And now I can pull my needle out. And so that this loop gets smaller. I still have 2 loops, but now I have a whole bunch of cable with this needle free to start working. So now I'm going to just kind of do this a little shift here, push my needle into all of these stitches. I like to push all the stitches onto the needle. And then get this wrapped around here. And then start knitting on this needle. So the other trick I do is, or the reason I like using this method is that I don't get ladders. And I tend to get a little bit more ladders when I use double points, but I have to concentrate on it more. But what I do in this case is I just knit the first stitch without really thinking about it much. And then at this point, I just give it a little bit of a pull. And so you can see here that this stitch has been kind of shrunk, right? Because I'm pulling and it's making the yarn go a little bit tight on this cable, which you might say isn't so good because now this stitch isn't the size of my needle. But what it does is it helps like decrease that ladder. And when my needle comes back into these stitches, when I'm going to knit it the next time, it evens things out and it keeps my my tension normal. So that's, and if you pull tight before you do this stitch, then it tends to like come out. But if you just pull a little bit, just give it a little extra tension after you do that first stitch, I find that works really well. Anyway, you'll have to see what works for you. Don't go crazy. Don't pull like way too hard. But give it a little tension. All right, so then we work across. I'll do my my decrease again, and then I'll show you one more time how to do that. Shift your stitches around. All right, so here's the decrease. And okay, so drop the needle. And I can do a little turn. I'm going to pinch it together here. I'm going to pull the cable that will the next stitches are on so that the needle comes. I don't pull it all the way in. I just pull it until my needle is here because I find that gives me plenty of room. And then I pull this one to make that loop just a little bit smaller. And then I'm ready to pull my needle out to get ready to knit. And I bring it back around, push my stitches in. And get going. So I either always put my needle on top of the cable or under. It doesn't matter too much as long as you get it to do like a loop around. But let's see. Get across here. All right, so that is how to do it. This pattern is all knit in garter stitch. So that means the first round you knit and then you have to do a purl round. So it's all knit, purl, but every time you're going to work until the last 3 stitches and then work 2 together. So you're either doing an SSK or purling the last 2 together. And here again, this was the stitch from the row before where now this yarn is just hanging out. So it got a little loose, but that's okay. I just pull it when I need to next time. All right, so let's take a look at this a little bit more and see what's going on here. All right, so like I said, I picked up the stitches along here. What other little tips? Let's see. I think it's easiest to, leave your yarns attached, of course, because you're only doing small rows. And I just carry the yarns up across the rows. On this side, I did try to kind of weave them as I went, like every time I caught the other yarn and switched back and forth, but I think it doesn't look as good. So I would actually recommend just leaving the other color like to the back while you're using this color. And then when you get to the color change, that's when I would just make sure that you twist them together. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, Laura? I didn't look at yours.
I don't think I twisted. I think I just dropped and picked up because it's only for 2 rows. So I didn't feel like it was going to be and it's a knit row and a purl row. So it's not like super tall. So I didn't feel like it was and you'll definitely notice that I got better in the tension and the laddering as I went along. I would say if you are diehard about making a gauge swatch, you could try and make a triangle as a gauge swatch. Because getting the tension right on the first one with either, I used double points, but with either double points or with magic loop, getting the tension just right and figuring out how that triangle works, and the fact that it has kind of those little swirly points that almost, because of the way the SSKs work, once you get through one, then you're going to do it 15 more times, 16 more times. So it's not going to be super hard once you kind of figure out how it works. But the first time it is a little awkward, manipulating, knitting outward and in and those kinds of things.
Yes. And it's, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. They're not like perfect triangles. So don't think that yours isn't coming out right because yours tends to swirl. That's just the nature of, she has you decrease at one side each time. And so it's kind of meant to be a little swirly, I think it's just fun and playful.
And you also will be able to see the line. You will have a slight jog, so you will be able to see the line in your triangle. That's I looked at her sample, and her sample looks the same way. It's a little bit kind of modern op art, but it's not 100% perfect. And I will tell you that the triangles will not lay flat either. You'll end up with a piece that looks kind of bunched up, and you can see that in Suzanne's just a little bit. Once you block it and kind of
mine's
spread
not
it
blocked
out, you'll be able to lay it out flat.
Yeah,
so
I was very tempted to steam it before I showed it to you guys, but
and it will. I mean, it'll still be a little funky at those at each corner, but it will lay flat because the finished piece does lay nice and flat and wears flat. It's not lumpy and bumpy. It just it's a little more it's not rectangular, so it's a little more faith in the fact that it will kind of end up okay.
Yes. Yes. So, okay, I am taking my needles out of this so that it doesn't get really, really wonky. And then I'm going to show you how to start, because I know that's the really hard part is getting started with magic loop, especially if you've got these three things, which is a little bit different than normal. And I want to be able to show you that. So any questions so far? Or, all right, tell me to speed up if sometimes I feel like I'm going too slow. Tell me to slow down if I'm going too fast too, but okay, so.
But yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna go fast for this one. And so I just put it on a holder. I love these holders, by the way. But now, and I'm just gonna do a little bit of might cheat a little bit, but so I have my long 50-inch or 40-inch cable. And so when you start a new triangle, she has you actually cast on the first 2 sides of the triangle and then pick up stitches along for the 3rd side of the triangle. I don't think it matters all that much how you do it, but anyway, we might as well follow how she did it. So she does do a long, or I did a long tail cast on. What did you do, Laura?
So did I.
I think it makes
We're doing
it easy.
a lot of casting on this project because each triangle gets cast on its own. So
Yes.
do whatever is most comfortable to you, and we'll give you a not too tight outer edge because there's a little bit of movement and you want it to be able to block okay, but a long tail is fine.
Yes, long tail is good too, and you want to be able to see what to pick up. So
yes.
Really, you know, we always say consistency is key. So whatever you choose, be consistent. And then things will work out well. Okay, so you know what? I'm not even going to count on this because I want to be able to get through and get onto the next section too. So, but what you do, she has you cast on, you know, 3 groups, 3 sets of stitches. So pretend that this is the first one. So I actually cheat. I don't know if it's cheating or not, but a lot of times what you'll do in Magic Loop is you'll cast on all your stitches and then you'll like slide your stitches and pinch and pull out a loop. But I don't like to count, I guess, as much or something. So what I do is I cast on the set of 3 stitches. It's in the pattern. And then I actually go and already put in like separating my loops. So in this case, I'm casting on one section. Now I'm going to cast on another section. So I pulled the stitches onto the yarn. I kept my hands kind of in my cast on position. And now I'm just going to cast on some more. So I'm going to pretend like my needle's here. Let's see, how does it work?
And if that doesn't work for you, the other thing you could do is you could cast on the correct number of stitches and then you could just slide a stitch marker there. Yes,
stitch marker. I did do that like once too. What am I doing here? Okay. Sorry, guys. So, and then you just get back going with your, why am I? Oh, Laura, what am I doing here? Okay.
I usually put it under the needle, under the cord.
There we go. Okay. Still not looking right. Okay. I always keep my tail, the tail of the yarn over the thumb. And then I don't get quite as lost, but for some reason I'm getting lost. Okay, there we go. So yeah, under maybe worked better, but so
but if you find that confusing, just put a stitch marker because then you'll know where to pinch and pull and you won't have to count again.
Yes.
And you'll only need 1 stitch marker because for the final side, you're going to pick up along the side of the triangle. So you'll know where to stop your cast on and then the rest will be picked up.
Okay,
or,
so
I saw someone say she used the small Chowgu needle, so I'm guessing she might have used like a 9-inch circ to do the outer edge of it.
Yeah,
and if you do that, then I would just use the 3 stitch markers to mark all of your corners, just so you know where you're supposed to, you know, or 2 to mark your corners and 1 to mark your beginning of round.
Yeah, that would work too, but you get down to where you only have a few stitches.
Yes,
so
then she said she
with
switched
that,
to double points.
Then you'll have to switch. Yeah.
So
all right.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no. All right. So I did like about the same number here, about the same number here. And now I'm going to pull my needles out again and go into picking up stitches. Again, you don't have to do it at this point. You can, at this point, you could just cast on the number and then go here and pick up the stitches. And then once you're going to join in the round, that's when you could get everything set. But let's see. So when you're working along these edges, they look a little funky. But what you're doing is picking up. So it's pretty easy to tell the right side and the wrong side. So you're going to have the right side facing up. And we're picking up and knitting is what the, I don't know, terminology is. So without getting this too crazy. Keep that off to the side. I am going to pick up. So you can see that these look like the purl bumps. I'm not going to go into those. I'm going to go kind of around, and you'll see these chains. On mine, it looks like they're all kind of these diagonal stitches. Can you see those well enough in the picture?
I think so.
Yeah. So whatever you choose, just be consistent. And you can always count how many of them you see to make sure that you are starting on the right one. But it's a little, I would say it's a little forgiving in that manner. But so when you go pick up and knit, it just means that you kind of pretend like this is a stitch on your left-hand needle. So go into that and grab it, and then that counts as a stitch. And then you just work your way along, going into each of those diagonal, I don't know what they are, what you call them.
Diagonal chain loops.
Chain loops, yes, that's a good one. And like I said, just be consistent. And if you mess up, just take it out and start again. If you're really off on, your number, or you come out like you think you've picked up the right number and you've counted and then you stopped like right here or something, you need to get at least close to this corner.
You will get really good at identifying which stitches are the corners and which ones to pick up, because not only will you be picking up to do every triangle except the first one on at least one side, that's also how you're going to pick up to do your straight rows across. You're going to pick up along the bottom of the triangles. So this is a lot of counting and picking up stitches. It's not hard. Once you do it and you get the feel for it, it will get easier, but you're going to do this process like a million times in this shawl. That's how this shawl is built.
Yes, lots of practice.
Yeah.
So, and you can kind of tell, like, if you've skipped one or not, they won't look very evenly spaced, like relative to the bottom. So just be patient. If you need to, take it out and redo that pickup along the edge. But it's nice because then you still see this ridge, and it flows really well in this garter stitch, the way that she has you do the pattern. All right, so once you've gotten all picked up and you've counted your stitches and you have the right number, then it's time to join in that round, and that can be the tricky part. But let's work on it together. So for me, I've already separated out. So now I just need to make sure that things aren't twisted. So if you hadn't separated out and you had a marker or you counted, then you would pull a loop out between these two stitches, and then also pull a loop out here before you got started. Okay, that's my tail there, down there. And then we get ready to join in the round. So I always just kind of make sure all of my, like the bottoms of the stitches are down. And then we need the needle to be in this set of stitches, right? So we picked over here. We don't need the needle in this one, but we need to give ourselves enough loop so that we can pull out. So I'm holding on to these stitches and I'm pulling this loop of the cable until my stitches get close there. And then I'm just going to pinch that with my fingers. And then I'm going to pull this loop to get this loop bigger. Okay, so now that loop's manageable. This loop is huge. And now I can pull this needle out and give myself enough room to work with this needle and knit. All right, so now I'm going to just shove the needle into all of these stitches. This gets a little hard, but then it will get easier. All right, and then actually now, because like this first row counts as a knit row, now I need to start off with a purl row. So I go right into a purl row. Again, look at how much space I have here with my first stitch. I don't worry about it until that first stitch is formed. So I make that first stitch, and now I'm gonna pull my yarn so that I don't have like a huge gap. But you know what? You probably will even have a little gap there. Just trust yourself a little bit. And as you do more and more rounds, it will adjust itself. So don't freak out too much if you have like a big space right there. But once you do one stitch, pull, and then I kind of pinch here and do another couple stitches, and then that will hold it in place enough. And let's see if I can get to this other side to show you what it looks like, and then we can compare it to my other ones, and I can prove to you that it's gonna work out. All right. So this is by far, I think, the most complicated part of this pattern, and intimidating, I would say. So it does have, purl two together at the end. Okay, and then this is where it can, especially at first, look like there's going to be a huge gap there, but it'll work itself out. All right, so we need to, here this time I'm just kind of pushing the needle into there, pulling this needle and pulling this out. You'll get really fast. You'll surprise yourself. You'll get fast at which one to pull to make it right. But at first, just give yourself some grace to
we had an interesting question in the thread. Amanda asked if it's possible to do a provisional cast on or something so that you didn't have to pick up all the stitches.
Yeah, I was kind of like thinking about that too.
The issue with that is that you have to spend a little more time planning if you're going to do that, because you have to know ultimately which triangles are going to be picked up on which sides. And you can do that because she does have a diagram. So you could, according to the diagram, cast on, she has the diagram per triangle of like, this is triangle 4, and you're going to cast on 2 and pick up on the side of 3 or whatever. But you'd also deal with when you're picking up to do the long rows across, and you can't make all of your cast on sides provisional because you're picking up on some sides, and like, I don't think you can do all of them.
But actually at the end, don't you pick up all the way around?
That's true, you do.
So maybe you would, like, let me see. I'm just gonna put
at the end you pick up and do an I-cord all the way around.
Yeah, because like it would be kind of a mess, because you'd have stitches hanging out provisionally everywhere.
You need to have a bunch of spare needles or cables or yarn to cast onto, because you'd have lots of live stitches at different times.
You'd have tons of live stitches everywhere. And the other issue that I would see is that your ridges might look a little crazy in the middle, because you might have like a section of smooth stockinette or something where you did your provisional cast on. Instead of it looks really nice now because it looks like garter stitch everywhere, even when it's
the double ridges that appear between the triangles are because you have a ridge on one and a ridge on the other, and they connect.
So that way it looks a little funky. It's an interesting thought. Totally I would love to see it, but I think it would turn into craziness.
She said spaghetti. Barbara said, I think double points or the small 12-inch needle would be so much easier. So the way I knit mine, and I had to buy 2 sets to get enough needles, but we discussed this. I knit mine on Addy Flexi Flips, and I bought them in the correct size, and I bought 2 tubes because each tube only comes with 3 needles, but those are the needles that also have the little bit of cable in between. They're a cross between double points and like a circular needle. And now they are expensive, but I bought it because I was like, I'm going to knit triangles over and over and over again, and I want 3 needles plus a 4th to rotate around. So that is what I did. The other thing I was thinking is, I mean, theoretically, if you had 3 size 7 needles, I wouldn't know anyone who has 3 size 7 needles. But if you have 3 size 7 needles, you could also do sort of the socks on 2 circs idea, where if you have some small circs, you could give each side its own circ and just make sure that you don't knit across the different circs. But that is, again, that's more management. Or you could just get some really long deep ends.
Yep. Or like if you have the I'm a Chow girl. So sorry, but they, you know, they have like, or I think other companies have them too, but the shorties sets, right? That you could get shorty sets, and then you could have just make sure that the needle that you're working with. So this needle is the right size, and then the needle on the other side of the could be a different size. It could be like 1 size smaller.
That's true. You want the needle that you're wrapping your yarn around to create the stitch to be the correct size for gauge. But if there's a different size on the other side that's just holding the stitches in between, that's okay. But again, you have to remember that. So we're giving you this shawl is a little bit like a puzzle. It was once you get into the rhythm, it's not super challenging, but it is a lot kind of going on at one time, and it is fun. And it also is nice because at the beginning it's really small, and then it just gets bigger as you go. And you don't have to, the nice thing is you don't have to sew up all these triangles. Right.
Yes. So I'm back around now to where I started. So, but I still have just this one little measly string that is my connection. But don't worry, that will, you can see how this stitch is getting pulled tight. So once my needle gets back into that stitch, it will kind of even it out. The other trick is that at this point, I need to switch colors. So I would switch and start knitting with the next color. But let's take a look at my other triangles here. I know it looks like a big jumbly mess, but you can see that I don't really have jogs at my joins, and even kind of at the bottom, it's worked itself out. So just give your, trust a little bit, and don't freak out too much if you see like those lines kind of at the beginning. So that is what I was going to cover for picking up stitches and working in the round. So if you have more questions on that, let me know. We can get back to them. But I did want to cover just a couple other techniques that are in. Again, like Laura said, there's a lot of picking up stitches. So once you get all 3 triangles done, the light color is going to be the outside of your triangle. So this is the outside, and then you do at the very end, you go back and you pick up stitches to do just this little border kind of at the end there. But as you're working through the shawl, you'll pick up stitches all along the bottoms of these triangles. And then work this way. You'll do a little bit of increasing here to get that stitch. I think it's just knit front and backs everywhere. So not too difficult. Then the next kind of tricky part is when you get to this whole row of triangles. And this one, the first time, you'll just do a triangle all by itself. And then you do have live stitches along here that you keep. And so this triangle is done independently by itself. And then this triangle you cast on here, and then you pick up along this triangle, and then you use the live stitches from here. So that one, you do save yourself a little bit of picking up stitches with those live ones. But then you work this triangle, and then the next one, you only pick up along this edge and you work this one independently. And then you get to this one and you pick up along the edge and the live stitches, and you work this one independently. And then when you get to this bottom, when you're picking up the bottom, and then you pick up like 2 stitches for this little point part, and then along here, and then 2 more little stitches, and then along the bottom. if that helps make sense. Then you do some more just easy stripes with a little bit of increasing, and then you get to these points, and these are actually worked as short rows. So I'll very quickly do a little short row tutorial there, and then you just do a few more rows, a bind off, and then you go all the way back to here and pick up all the way along this. Sorry, I know you can't see my hands as I'm pointing, but you pick up all the way, I'll just show it in the top view, all the way along the top and do a few rows of garter. I think that kind of like makes it look more cohesive and flowy. But so
I will also say we're running a little bit long.
Yes,
which is fine.
right.
If you have to step out, that's fine. We are recording this. It will be posted to our YouTube channel. I already added that link in the chat thread. And so that will be up later tonight or tomorrow, as well as all of our other tutorial Tuesdays. And I do know that we have a tutorial Tuesday about short rows. So if you can't stay for this small demonstration, then we did a lot with short rows in, well, let's see, that was a private knit along. So that but I'm pretty sure we've done.
Oh yeah, we've done short rows too before. We've done lots of different types of short rows. I'm just going to show you the short row that she calls for in this pattern, and the way she talks about it. I've used it's a German short row, but not everybody, but there are like just different ways to talk about it. So I will show you the way she talks about it. All right, and continue to post any questions in the chat. So in this one, I switched colors here, but I have some, so you'll have live stitches when you start these short rows, and you'll have a whole bunch. You'll have like, 400 or whatever is the whole bottom of the shawl when you start to do these little triangles. And so you'll just knit a certain amount of stitches, and then you'll decrease that by 1 each time. So I'm gonna, let's see, I'll start with 9. So I'm gonna knit 9 stitches. Edges will get a little funky, but I'll knit these 9 stitches. I think 1, 2, 3. Okay, so 9 stitches, and then she uses a T, just a capital T to say turn. So that means you turn your work around and go back the other way. And then she says, so now your first stitch is going to be a double stitch. So to create the double stitch, see how when I turned, I'm leaving my yarn to the front and slip this stitch, and then you take your yarn and pull it over the top and pull down, and see how it took the stitch below and it created this double stitch. It looks a little funny. And then you just knit. So now I'll knit 8. Or how like 1 short of the edge, and then do another turn, leaving my yarn in the front, even though I'm going to knit, because you're always slip with the yarn in front. So slip that stitch and then pull over the top. And then you just will knit back. She has it all worked out for you, so you just knit the number of stitches that she says, but I think it ends up being that you knit up into that double stitch. So knit to that double stitch and then turn and do another double stitch. And then once you get till you only have like 1 stitch left before you reach the double stitch. So that's my double stitch. But I shouldn't have done it quite so close to the side, but so either way you turn it, just keep your yarn to the front when you do the slip, and then pull your yarn over the top of the needle and back down. Okay, and then once you've got enough and you're working on, then you'll see the double stitch. So here I can see, so instead of turning this time, I'm just going to knit those double stitches. So you'll see them come up. They look a little funny, and you knit them together. So you just pretend like they're 1 stitch. So knit those two together, knit these two together. And then you'll continue on. You'll like knit the whole set more, and then you'll turn back and forth and make another triangle. And then you'll move on. But so you'll still have double stitches hanging out on one side that you'll have to pick up when you go back the other way. But the double stitches, they are pretty easy to see and they feel a lot different. So if you get to them and you just feel a little, here, let's turn and let's pick them up on this side too. You know, that's a whole nother lesson in, you know, what you do if you mess up the double stitch. Maybe we can cover that sometime, but not today. So you can see this one, it looks funny. So if I tried to knit into that, I'd probably like notice. So just make sure that you knit the two together like one stitch, so you're not increasing or decreasing at all. You're just adding more height in certain areas. You can see where I did all those. I have like more fabric here than I did here. All right, what else, Laura? Can you think of anything else that was a little tricky that you wanted to talk about?
Like I said, this one was a little puzzle. It took me a little longer than usual because there were lots of pieces to it.
Yes.
Will we eventually create a kit for the Zen Zip tee with the 3/4 length sleeves? Yes, it's in the works. It will come. Suzanne didn't expect to move quite when she did, so that has kind of been the whole summer, which is also why we haven't had a lot of tutorials. We do have more coming up. We don't have any scheduled just yet, but I just mailed, literally snail mailed Suzanne a couple pairs of socks that I knit. So we're going to be doing some toe up 2 at a time socks with double sock blanks knit with 2 strands, so you can knit identical socks toe up. So we're going to be working on those. We have another couple shawls that I just sent off to be photographed. We're probably going to work on some sweaters. So we have plenty of things coming in time for knitting season.
Yes, and I promise I'm going to get working. My son goes back to school next week and things will probably settle down, I hope, a little bit.
Well, I was going to say, we'll probably have 1 or 2 tutorial Tuesdays in August, and then we'll sort of hit the ground running again in September as things come back, because we do have stuff in the works. Yes. It's just been kind of a busy summer. And yes, I'm enjoying my new job. What Suzanne, thank you so much, Catherine. Yes, I am working for Missouri Star, and I was telling Suzanne I just sent my first quilt top off to be machine quilted. I stuck it in the mail today, and it will come back whenever it comes back. So don't forget, if you want to purchase this kit, the kits are available and you'll save $33 between now and Friday. There's no code, just put it into your cart and check out. And if something else hops along for the ride, well, that's just how it is. We will be having the double palette, the double stranded sock yarn soon, so that will be coming soon, and we'll be talking about that more. If you're not on the mailing list, get on the mailing list. That's how you can get invited to these things. They're always free to attend. You just have to RSVP so you get the link. And thanks for joining us. Yes. We're so glad to be back.
Yay,
so
it's fun to be back.
Knitting, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, thank you.